Tennessee, Georgia. Producer Cam has got to introduce his first right or regrettable take.
Yeah, guys. So either these takes will make me regret ever saying them, or they'll be spot on. Like, there's no in between, obviously. And Georgia fans, if you want a better chance of beating Tennessee this weekend, there's a really simple solution. Georgia needs to bench Carson Beck for Jaden Rashada. And I can already hear it now. Dog Nation in Reddit posting crap right now. I can hear the YouTube comments. I can hear the keyboards clacking. And trust me, we read all of the YouTube comments, so I know how many of you guys slandered Damien's take that Ole Miss would upset Georgia. Look how that turned out. And like even one of our longtime listeners and active Twitter users, Matt Loves Vinyl, always abjectly downing Mike Bobo for his, I guess, offensive scheme. While there's some merit to that, I have to ask you, Chris and David, has there been any news today about Mike Bobo? Is he still the offensive coordinator at Georgia?
I believe he still is, yes.
Okay.
As for your take, who would have thought we might be getting we could get a Jaden Rashada Gaston Moore Bowl in the Georgia-Tennessee game? Here's where I stand on this. It's not the craziest thing I've ever heard, because if you can just tell Jaden Rashada, hey, don't turn the ball over, you probably score more than 10 points against Ole Miss. But I'm still holding on to all of the good tape that Carson Beck put together last year when he was processing the field so well. His decision-making was unbelievable. His accuracy was fantastic. Yes, he had better weapons. The offensive line had played better. But I don't really know what has caused him to see the field so poorly. I thought our colleague Bruce Feldman wrote a really good piece on Monday, kind of asking around to scouts and coaches kind of what's gone wrong with Carson Beck. A lot of confusion there, some interesting theories. But, the last 5 games, 7 touchdowns, 10 turnovers, 8 interceptions. I'm still going to hold on to maybe at some point he snaps out of it, because if he does and he starts playing the way he did last year, does anybody want to bet against Georgia winning the national championship?
Well, I'll say this take is an obvious no. I mean, you're still in contention for the national championship, and I don't think that Tennessee defense is the one you want to throw Jaden Rashada out there for.
Fair point,
one that is getting a lot of pressure. And Carson Beck's numbers are still pretty good. Like, he's 7.8 yards per attempt. He's completing 65% of his passes. He threw for 300 yards against Florida, almost 500 against Mississippi State.
The problem is,
he's just got to stop turning it over. He just has to stop turning it over. It feels like he hasn't been an impact player outside of maybe the Bama game in the second half. It feels like he's just been kind of a caretaker other than that. Yeah, and it doesn't feel like he has any comfortable options of who to throw to. There's no Brock Bowers. There's no Ladd McConkey. And the offensive line is banged up, and he's getting pressured more. And he's not handling it well. I think that's what it simply comes down to. And I don't think if a quarterback's getting pressured too much, you want to throw in a young guy for that.
Yeah.
Bench the guy. Bench him. I'm sitting here listening to you guys, and I'm trying to process it. Ubben, you're sitting here talking about, I want to hope that, the tape that I've seen from him before, he can snap back into that. That is not what this business is about. This is a what can you do for me now business. And I know NFL is more of a business than college, but when you're paying these guys a premium, then you have to treat it like a business. So what is Carson Beck doing for me right now if I'm Kirby Smart and I'm just Georgia's team? He's turning the ball over. And I'll tell you guys this. Carson Beck has the luxury of being on not Georgia's best team, but being on a pretty good football team. Because if you take Carson Beck and you put him on an average football team at best with not nearly the amount, I know we're talking Georgia doesn't have as much talent as they used to, but not nearly the amount of talent that they have across the board at skill position, not nearly the guys up front. He would be the leader of like a 3-7 team right now. Like, that's the caliber player that Carson Beck is showing that he is. Then you look at guys like Quinn Ewers, who got benched before. You look at Jackson Arnold, who had a turnover problem. He got benched. You look at Davis Warren. He had a turnover problem. He got benched. One thing
and
about
then he got the job back.
And I was going to say, one thing about all three of those quarterbacks is that they got their opportunity back. So even if I look into the mind of Steve Sarkisian or some of these other guys, like, well, maybe benching our starters who were turning the ball over was a message of we cannot continue to allow you to play like this because, yes, we do still have the opportunity to make it to the CFP playoff, and we do have the opportunity in a national championship, but everybody in the world knows that they're not going to get there with Carson Beck turning the ball over continuously the way he has been. So if anything, Send a message, set a precedent. That's what a lot of other college teams have been doing. We've been talking about a 2-quarterback system amongst a lot of teams where, okay, one guy doesn't play well enough. Okay, you put another guy in. I haven't agreed and said that that's the best method, but times are changing. Like, the way that people are playing the game has changed, and thought processes and rotations are different now. So if I'm Georgia, why not put somebody out there and see if they can just take care of the ball better? Because then you got two options. Either you find out that Jaden Rashada can just control the ball, not give it to the other team, and you have a better chance of winning. Or Carson Beck ultimately gets pissed off and takes accountability and just stops giving the ball away to teams that don't wear the same color jersey as him. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not like Carson Beck can play any worse, so I don't see any.
He could.
You think so?
He could.
You think so? I don't think so. Well, maybe my standards are a little bit higher, but I don't think they can play any worse.
I'm kind of with Damien on this. I don't know that you could see him play a whole lot worse. It's been rough sledding.
But the other part of that, though, is you put in Rashada. Rashada was not good at Arizona State last year, by the way. He completed barely 50% of his passes. That I think is interesting. Who's going to replace him? That's the problem.
If you had, don't forget, Georgia had Jaden Iamaleava in the fold last year, and then USC flipped him. If you had Iamaleava sitting back there, a guy who's done something, he won they got to the Mountain West Championship and lost to Boise last year. They won a bunch of games last year. He was really productive. I'd feel a lot. I think I'd still say hang on to Carson for a little bit longer if he keeps turning the ball over. But I'd feel a lot more intrigued about the possibility if you had a guy like Iamaleava on the roster who's done something somewhere else. With Rashada, it feels like just a dice roll for your season more than like, well, we feel good about where this guy's at because you haven't seen him do anything. And the times you've seen him on the field, I mean, he's been just as turnover prone. It was a lot of like, the receivers down there somewhere stuff at times at Arizona State.
It's a dice roll every time Carson Beck drops back to throw the ball.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about rolling the dice. And the product of what you're seeing from Carson Beck right now, are you going to continue to roll the dice and lose on that? Or are you going to try to roll the dice on somebody who could potentially get you a better outcome?
I would just say it can always get worse. It can always get worse.
Real quick, before we move on, I know you guys want to get to the X's and O's of this, and then we can move on to the next game. But to your guys' point, you're going to do the dice roll with Carson Beck, like you said, Damien. And I think if there are factors around you that you can't change, like your offensive line, you're not going to get Caden Proctor at your left tackle tomorrow. Ernest Green's still going to go up against James Pierce, where last week he got worked by Princely Umanmielen and gave up 2 sacks. You're still not going to have over, 3.5 yards per carry, and you're still going to be the 90th ranked, rushing offense in the country, 100th ranked rushing offense in the country. That's not changing. You're not going to get new offensive weapons in there at the skill position to catch the ball because there's been a lot of drops by Georgia. That's not happening overnight. What is the one thing you can change? And that's Carson Beck. If you're Kirby Smart, you brought in Jaden Rashada because you saw something in him that is applicable to your team that can help elevate your squad. And this is the opportunity to do it. Granted, it is a pressure cooker situation, playoff stakes at the line, but Carson Beck is not giving you any confidence to show, hey, I can come in here and I can perform and lead this team to a win.
Mm-hmm. I will say it's another interesting part of this game. We need to talk about the health of Nico Iamaleava. A lot of conflicting information. You talk to people. I think ultimately they just don't know. He is in concussion protocol. And how that plays out, how his body reacts is sort of TBD. I don't think there's a definitive answer based on what I have heard. I just don't think Tennessee has a chance to win this game without him. And even with him, I think it'll be tough. This feels like I'm with you, Damien. I think this feels like a first of 13, first of 17 kind of game where, 2017, something like that. It looks like that's what this game is going to put. That number, that 48.5 is really, really high. I'm like, I don't know how either one of these teams gets to like 28. That would be kind of surprising to me. So, it's going to be really, really interesting, and maybe Georgia's offense has something to surprise them here. But I'll tell you what would be really surprising is Carson Beck not turning the ball over anymore.